morning, folks, and welcome to another great edition of Money Truth Moments with our very own money expert, our very own money whisperer, Judy Kopenbarger. How are you this morning?
Hi, Carlos. I am well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I was so excited. I got up this morning. I thought, it's another beautiful Tuesday morning. We got a great show lined up for folks, and it's one of my favorite subjects to talk about to help people, and that's identity protection, right? So today, folks, if you're just joining us for the first time, we're going to be talking about identity insight and protecting your finances. What does that look like? So make sure you have your pen, paper, your coffee, tea, whatever it is that you drink in the mornings, and hang on because it's going to be a great show. And if you're not following Judy, please do so at judykopenbarger.today for all relevant content. All of our social media links are on there as well too. So what do you say we get started?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Okay, so in your world, it's one industry that it's also very high, more than likely to get people bombarded with identity theft and different tricks to get people to lose their finances. So, can you describe some common methods of identity theft related to personal and business finances that sometimes individuals experience?
Oh, sure. And it's no surprise the stories I hear and the stories I hear of really bright people that know better get sucked into these things. The criminals are smart. They're awful and they're awfully smart. Um, but anything they'll mail you something and it looks like you need to help somebody or it looks like you need to fix something. The newest thing that I keep getting is these emails that say your package can't be delivered, call us
Yeah,
so we can tell you where it should go. And then, of course, you end up giving them information that's missing from all the rest of the information they have on you. They'll do it in a call. They'll do it in a text. They'll do it. I mean, every possible way they can access you, that seems to be happening. And so it's crazy. And then once they get you to do something, now they have information and they can use that to do something. And, even those special wallets they have now that keep people from swiping the
right.
information from your credit card. Credit cards have everything. It's everything about you and your finances on there. So that's one thing that people might want to think about protecting against, and I think we'll talk about that too. But it's everything from physically getting it from you to hacking into your computer. You'll have a pop-up on your computer, and I know this is your world, right? It pops up and it
Totally.
says, oh, your software's out of date or somebody's doing something bad to your computer. Give us a call. And my mom has done that. And I'm like, get off the phone. Who are you talking to? So, and then you call and they're just really nice, usually not from US. They're really nice people and they're just there to help. And you end up giving access to your computer. Don't do that. And it happens to businesses. And it might not even be through something that you do or don't do. It might just happen. You hear about this ransom stuff,
Mhm.
and I've had businesses, business owners that have said that happened to me, where you have to pay to get your computer back, get access to your software to continue doing your business. And I know the government, or I guess law enforcement, says don't pay ransom, don't do that. But what are you supposed to do if you can't operate your business? So there's all kinds of ways that these smart bad guys are getting us. So it's definitely worth a conversation.
Yeah, and I think also when we're talking about ransomware, it's a gamble, right? Because you may pay it, but what are the chances that you're really going to get your data back and they're just going to take your money and walk away too? So
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of layers that come into this, and you're right. The latest one is your package, we couldn't deliver it and so forth. And I
Hmm.
can't tell you how many folks I've ran into, also even on texting, right? And I think a good rule of thumb is if you're not expecting a package, if you don't know who's texting you, just block them so you don't have to be bothered. Some of the latest texts I get is, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, and I will respond like, "Who is this?" Because it's business, right? So you don't know who could
Hmm.
it be. And when they answer with, "Don't you remember me?" Then I'm like, "Yeah, this is another spammer," right? So just directly on there. So there's different layers, folks, that we're going to talk about to help protect you. And more importantly, I think that what's really sad is majority of our senior community is the one that they actually target the most.
Yeah.
Most of them live alone. Most of them don't know. Maybe a grandson or granddaughter that helps them once in a while when they're around town. But we want to make sure that everyone or folks that you know as well are very well protected. So let me ask you this. So in your world, what are the first steps a person should take if they suspect that financial identity has been compromised?
Yeah, well, confirm that. So check your bank accounts, check your credit cards, look at the statements. Maybe call and put a fraud alert if you don't already have them set up on your bank and credit card accounts. Any statements that you get from securities or any investments that you have, check those as well. Make sure nobody's been looking in there that shouldn't have access to that information. Um, just kind of do your due diligence. That part's kind of intuitive. Just look at your statement, see if anything unusual has happened, and maybe go back a month or two if this has happened to you. What's not intuitive is this can impact your credit score too. And if somebody's
Right.
taking your information, they might be opening accounts or opening loans in your name, and using accounts, change the address, and then they just buy whatever they want and bill it to another place. You won't even know. One way that you can check is look at your credit reports, not only for credit score information. A lot of people will look and see, what kind of rates can I get on my interest, on my house or my car purchase or something. But look at those to see if any accounts have been opened that you don't recognize. That's something people sometimes overlook. So make sure you do that to see if anything has happened. It's probably good every year to do that anyway. And if you go online, there's all these different credit score companies, credit agencies, right? You can go on and say, I suspect some fraud. Somebody accessed my information. Somebody stole my credit cards. I lost my wallet, whatever it was. But go on there, and every year, if you expect or suspect there's been fraud, they'll give you a free report, full report of your whole credit history, all the accounts you have, how much is owed on them, and line that up with what you know to be true. And that way you'll know exactly if something has been compromised or not. So that's something people overlook. Don't forget that part, right? Make sure it's not an ongoing thing.
So let's see if we can do maybe. I've got a question for you because you brought this up before, but can a trust help? Because I mean that's come up too, right? We talked about this in the shows before, the importance of having a will, a trust, and when it comes to identity theft, can a trust provide some guidance or some help? And maybe we can do a little deep dive into that. Why it
Yeah.
is important to have one.
Yeah, it's a good law school answer for this one. It depends. It depends on what kind of trust, how it's funded, and what it's doing for you, right? So if it's a revocable living trust, which most people, if you say the word trust, most attorneys do in this area of law, if you say trust, they're thinking revocable living trust, and not all trusts are. But a revocable living trust is usually what people set up to put their house in, protect their assets from probate, right? To make sure everything's streamlined when they die and we don't have to deal with the courts. So, and it does that pretty well. But what it also does is it passes everything through, normally passes everything through to your ordinary social security number, which has its own credit score. It has its own credit history. It has its own liabilities and all of that. So there's not necessarily protection that way. However, if you own your home in the name of ABC Trust, for example, rather than in your name or your name with your spouse, that's a little more privacy and a little less transparency for somebody who's trying to do something. You see commercials now of people, I used to steal houses for a living and I would just go down and sign them over to myself. And people wouldn't know for months. And then there's a foreclosure and now the house is mine, right? Or whatever. So that can happen. You want to make sure if you have a trust that you're also watching your credit scores, watching your credit accounts, making sure that none of that is compromised still. But the trust, to answer your question, it gives you a little barrier. If somebody's targeting you, it's going to be harder for them to find your assets if they're named in a trust that's not your name. So not a lot of asset protection in a traditional revocable living trust. There are other trusts that do give you asset protection and total creditor and predator protection. A revocable living trust typically doesn't do that.
Okay. So what do you think also about when we're talking about this? When you look at some of the situations you've dealt with, right? Have you come across any unfortunately any folks who have gone through this and trying to rebuild their lives after this?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. I'll get a call from a client or even, years later, clients that used to be clients, and they'll say, what do I do? Somebody swiped my credit card at the gas station. I guess that's a thing where they have a little machine that actually takes all your credit card information off that. Or they'll go to a restaurant. This has happened to us a couple of times. You go to a restaurant, you pay for dinner, and you find out a half hour later, you get all these fraud alerts and somebody's been out shopping and thousands of dollars of items have been purchased and not even in the same city.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know that just happened when I went to dinner. So what's going on in the back of this restaurant, right? So that's happened to us a few times. And it's happened to clients so many times where they have to close all of their accounts, put fraud alerts on everything, start all over, open brand new accounts, and then try to get back the money that's been taken. You have to prove up that wasn't me that bought all those, whatever, 5,000 tape rulers or, whatever, tape measures. So it's a thing. It's definitely a thing.
So let me follow up with something also. So we have a variety of folks that watch our shows. Everyone from just starting out into the getting working on finances. Some folks who are retired already. Some are getting to retirement. Some are kind of in that middle of the road, right? So as you start planning, we you definitely talked about trust with that. As you start planning your future, whether it's the beginning, the end, the middle, or whatever where you are, what is some best practices that related to finance, right? That you want to share with folks to make sure that they're following these A, B, C, and D and doing this checkoff list, right? To make sure that they not only are they protected, but they're also in a good place, so they're not being reactive but being proactive.
Yeah. Well, I think you want to be diligent. Check your statements regularly. Don't just la 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 assume the banks are right or the credit cards, are right with totally accurate information that is uncompromised. Don't assume everything is well. You want to kind of be diligent about that. Another thing that you can do is you can put and this again, this is your area of expertise, right? You can put software on your computer, on your cell phone that protects against things like this. There's red flags where I guess your computer, maybe you could speak to this, Carlos. Your computer knows that something that is not normal is there, or somebody who shouldn't be there is in there, right? Something's happening. Software like that can really be helpful. Fraud alerts on all of your accounts is helpful. What you want to remember though is when you do that and you travel, you want to make sure that you let the banks or the credit card agencies know I'm traveling. Otherwise, you are going to be stuck, right? Because they don't know you're not the bad guy over there in Tahiti or Europe or wherever you are. So there's a lot you can do. But Carlos, why don't you speak to a couple of really great tips for folks? This is, technology is at the end of my, breadth of knowledge. But what can people do to make sure that they're not getting hacked or people aren't taking their information from their computer or cell phone or even from the mail?
I think what's crucial is exactly what you said. If you see pop-ups a lot, chances are that your computer is infected. Make sure And what's funny, even businesses who have been running for a while, they've never updated their systems. They don't even have antivirus for that matter, right? So they're just kind of out there lingering. And then when you ask them like, "What's going on?" Well, our software just works with this particular operating system, and they don't no longer support it, which means that you're pretty much vulnerable when you get out there as well too. So it's about being very careful with that. But I'm also going to give you folks a quick tip because I want to get back to we have a question that was posted. Um, when you're working with your credit cards as well too, if you have an iPhone, I'm not 100% sure on the Android, but put your credit card in. There's alerts that you can get text, and exactly the moment that card's swiped, you'll get an alert on your phone. You know immediately, okay, what's going on. Like your example to the restaurant piece, right? The moment they swipe it, I know that it's been paid, and then if you get those additional ones, but it's another layer to keeping you alert rather than waiting till the end of the month when you're doing your bills. And just be careful also when you're doing your finances. If you're checking in your investment portfolio, if you're checking in your banking account, right? Make sure that your browsers are up to date and they're secure. So those are some quick tips. I don't want to make this more about cybersecurity because I want to get back to what we're talking about. It is important. I have a question also that one of our viewers just posted, and it basically says, "Good morning, Judy. What are some investments a young person like me could make to set up myself for financial success in the future?"
Okay, well, that's a diversion.
Yeah, it's we
Protecting
need a
against
pivot on
things.
that, but we're going to tie all this back in. So for sure.
Yeah, well, what I would say to this young man or this young investor is make sure that you're investing with balance. So, there's stock. Everybody gets excited about stocks, cybercurrency, all that stuff. When stock goes up, bonds go down. When bonds go up, stock go down, right? So there's always this kind of opposite relationship timing wise. So you want to balance both. And what that'll help you do is reduce risk by weathering storms. because we don't know if the economy is going to be strong or not. Are we going to be in war or not? Hopefully not. But when these things happen, it does impact the markets, the interest rate markets and the stock markets, equity markets. And so you want to have a balance with whatever you do. So I would suggest for most people, if you're starting out, don't just go buy one or two stocks and sit on those for 100 years. I would try to buy with balance mutual funds or exchange traded funds. Say that 3 times fast. Exchange traded funds, ETFs. I would go into one of those because you can diversify. So instead of buying $1,000 worth of one stock, you buy $1,000 worth of little pieces of 500 stocks, for example, and then maybe a bunch of bonds too. So that would be my answer. The thing about going into mutual funds or ETFs is you're going to have these other charges because you're paying a fund manager to pick all those stocks and bonds for you. And so there's going to be a fee. It can be really big or really small. I vote really small. No load funds is a place to look. No load mutual funds. So that would be a good place to start, whether it's a non-qualified account, just your savings money that you're investing now, or if it's in your IRA, or if it's in your retirement program, if you have a 401k or a 403b at work to invest there, that's probably going to be mutual funds on the menu for you. But that will serve you well. And you will be so surprised how that little bit, I love this question, that little bit, that $50, $100, maybe a couple $100 a month, how it adds up. And pretty soon, Mr. Money's out there working for you. I mean, you go to work and so does Mr. Money. And then pretty soon, Mr. Money makes more money than you do every week and every month. And that gets to be really exciting. So start early, invest often, and you are just on your way. Great question.
Yeah, and actually, he's got some really good questions to ask. So, Nathan, if you're still watching, we're going to make sure we address this at a later time because we're running out of time. But the way I want to tie this in is also, we've talked about when you're dealing with a financial investor, right? Not everybody's created equal. We talked about insurance people the same way, right? So, what are some and maybe briefly just tell us what are some things that we should be careful with to protect not only what we're going to invest in or who we're dealing with when it comes to that. And I think that's also ties into our identity protection and protecting our finances too, right? Like you don't want to go with an investment, somebody doing business out of the back of a car, like right, common sense, but you never know, right?
Yeah, and there's this whole spectrum of risk. So you can go VC. You got venture capitalists that come at you with a PowerPoint and they say, "We're going to make this amazing widget. It's never been done before. We invented it. We're getting the patents, and you should come invest with us." Well, is it for accredited investors like rich people, or is it a risk I should be taking? Who are you people, right? And so, no, it's really good. It's going to be great. It's ground floor opportunity. That's one extreme. That's extremely risky. Doesn't mean that it won't work and they're not going to make money. Maybe it's a family that started this business, family member. So if you do that, that's one extreme. The other extreme would be something like you walk into the bank and you say, "What are you offering?" And they say, 3% CD. Okay, well, I feel safe there. Your money's not really doing much, Mr. Money. You're kind of tying his hands. He can't earn a lot, but it's safe. And I know the banker and I can see the name and there's branches on every corner. So it must be a good deal. Must be good. That's the other extreme. And I like for people to be somewhere in the middle, right? Take a little bit of risk, but manage it well. And if you don't know how to do this, if you haven't been blessed to have family that talk to you about investments, you haven't been investing since you were a kid, you don't have a business degree, whatever. If you really don't know how it works and it's just like gibberish to you, or you kind of shut down because it's stressful, overwhelming, I don't really understand all this stuff. That's a lot of people, right? If that's you, work with a professional, but you got to be careful about the kind of professionals. So in this industry, if you're totally new to it and you just, dropped from another planet here, what I would say about investing and about investment professionals that help you, wealth advisors or consultants or financial planners, is you want to be sure you're working with someone who has your interest at heart. The industry has a lot of conflict of interest in it, where whatever you're investing in is coming from someone sitting on the other side of the table. They're on the opposite side of the transaction, and they're getting paid based on what you do, commission, right? So it's kind of like most financial advisors or financial professionals are in a relationship with you that's transactional. So whatever you do will help them figure out their bottom of their paycheck, right? So that's just a built-in conflict of interest. So ways that you can avoid the conflict of interest or at least minimize it are to work with folks that have to eliminate that conflict of interest and they know what they're doing. Those are probably the two big factors if you're looking for someone to help you in this area. One thing that you can do is look for a fiduciary. And there's an AIF credential out there. I've got one of these, but there are many people that have it. And the accredited investment fiduciary, we have audits. We have to prove that when we give advice to a client about what they're investing in, there might be costs associated with it, but it's the best one for them based on where they're going and based on their whole financial picture. It's best for them. It's not just because it pays me the highest sales rate or the highest commission. So I have to prove that. So if you work with a fiduciary, they're going to have to do that. Most people in this industry are not fiduciaries. And they say they do the best thing for you, but if you look at, the track record, do they, do they? I hate to say that about this industry. There's a lot of great people, that help people with their finances. Another thing that you can do is look for a CFP when you're looking at the factor of, do they know what they're doing? Because most people that just, they work in the bank or they work in the broker dealer or they work, at one of these corner shops, every strip mall now has a place where you can do investments and financial stuff, right? So maybe they have all of the sales credentials that they need because it is a sales department for most people. But do they have the expertise to really look at the whole picture? And maybe you don't need that. But I think, if you're serious about investing and you're growing wealth for the long term, you need to look at the whole picture, everything, the estate planning and the insurances and the investments and the cash flow and the leverage on your house and the loans and the credits, all of that stuff you need to look at. So a financial planner rather than a financial investment advisor might be something to look for. And some have to go to school and some don't, college, right? Some don't. A CFP designation does require college. So at least you have an educated person that you're working with. And that's a certified financial planner. So they have to have not only a background of higher education, but they have also extra specialized education in all of these areas of personal finance. So that might be a way to go. And then if they're not a personal investment advisor, which most are because that's how they came up in the business, they can direct you to one. And then looking at the whole picture, you can choose the investments that are appropriate for you as you're growing your wealth and creating all the goals that you want to achieve. So long-winded answer, but look for someone who knows what they're doing and someone who has to help you over their interest, right? Put your interest first.
And so I know time flies when you're having fun, right? So we're at the tail end of our show now. So let's talk. Our money challenge. And this would be an interesting one for sure, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we need to focus on this whole getting ripped off thing. What can we do to protect ourselves and how can we shore up what we have already in place? So I would say my challenge for you is two things. One is the easy part for me, it doesn't involve technology. And that's grab your statements, print them out, go online, look in the portals, wherever your statements are for your investments, your credit cards and your bank accounts. Go back over the first quarter of this year and look at, is there anything unusual there? What's kind of funny is when people do this exercise, they see all these subscriptions they forgot about, and you can also pare those out of your life too and, save some money. But go through and see if there's anything unusual. I don't remember charging that. I don't remember going there. Look for that. I'd say do that first. That's the easy part for me. The second one is the technological part. So make sure that if you have that ransomware stuff, if you have LifeLock, if you have software protections on your computer, where if somebody hacked it, it'll let you know something's going on, or there's too much activity that you aren't doing, but somebody is. Check into that too. So get someone like Carlos. I mean, you would be a great resource for people, and just have someone that you trust. Go into your computer, see what you have, and make sure all those subscriptions are updated. Not the faulty ones or the flawed ones or the fake ones where they say, oh, update this, and then they get your money, right? But the real ones that you know are credible. And have someone that knows what they're doing help you, like Carlos. He's helped my mom when she answers the phone and these creeps are like getting into her computer. It's like, no. So yeah, those are two things that I would say are your challenge. Check your credit, check all of your accounts, make sure they're good, and then look at technology, what you can do more, better, or different to shore that up, to protect yourself from these really smart bad guys. That's your challenge.
All right, folks. And as usual, if you need any answers to your questions, please let us know ahead of time. If you want to get some additional content to help you stay secure, let us know as well. Send us a message. And if you're just joining us, you have to watch the beginning of the show because it's all about protecting your identity in the finance world and your everyday life. So make sure you share the stream with folks. And also make sure that you're following Judy at judycopenbarger.today. We're here every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. with the replay on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Any last parting words, Judy?
Make it a great week. You've got this.
All right. Until next week, take care.
Bye-bye.